black car moved slowly through the quiet streets as evening settled over the city. The driver kept both hands steady on the wheel, careful not to hit the brakes too hard. In the back seat sat a man who rarely came home before midnight. People across the city knew him as a powerful figure. Some feared him, others respected him, and many simply avoided crossing his path. His life ran on strict routines, and those routines almost never changed. But tonight something was different. The man leaned slightly toward the window, watching the dim streetlights pass by one after another. He had ended his meeting earlier than expected. The room had been full of loud voices, tense discussions, and tired faces. After hours of listening, he suddenly felt a strange urge to leave. No announcement, no explanation. He simply stood up, walked out, and told the driver to take him home. Even the driver had looked surprised. The mansion where the man lived stood on a quiet road far away from the busy center of the city. Tall gates surrounded the property, and security cameras watched every corner. The house itself was large and carefully maintained. From the outside it looked peaceful, almost like a place where nothing unusual could ever happen. The car turned the final corner and rolled toward the gate. Two guards standing outside immediately straightened when they saw the headlights. They were used to seeing the boss return late at night, usually after long business meetings. Seeing the car arrive this early caught them off guard. One of the guards quickly opened the gate. The car moved slowly up the long driveway lined with tall trees. Soft lights along the path illuminated the road just enough to guide the vehicle to the front entrance. When the car stopped, the driver stepped out first and opened the back door. The man stepped onto the stone driveway, adjusting his coat slightly as he looked toward the house. From the outside, everything seemed normal. The front lights were on, and the house looked quiet like it always did at this hour. But something still felt unusual. He couldn't explain it, but there was a faint sense that the night was different from the others. He walked toward the large wooden doors at the entrance. A guard inside quickly opened them before he could reach for the handle. The moment he stepped inside, the familiar smell of polished wood and clean floors filled the air. The house staff took pride in keeping everything perfect. The floors shined, the furniture was arranged carefully, and nothing ever appeared out of place. Usually the house felt almost silent. But tonight it wasn't completely quiet. As he removed his coat and handed it to one of the staff members, he noticed something small. Somewhere deeper inside the house, a faint sound echoed through the hallway. At first it sounded like movement, maybe footsteps. He paused for a moment. The staff member who took his coat avoided eye contact, quickly turning and walking away toward the closet. The man slowly looked down the long hallway that stretched toward the back of the mansion. Normally most of the lights would already be off at this hour. But tonight one light glowed faintly near the far end. He stood there for a few seconds, listening carefully. Another sound came from the same direction. This time it was clearer. It sounded like voices. The man frowned slightly. Visitors were never allowed inside the house without his approval. The rules were very clear and everyone working there knew it. He began walking down the hallway. His footsteps were slow and quiet, the polished floor reflecting the dim lights above him. As he moved farther inside, the voices became easier to hear. They were not loud voices. In fact, they sounded cautious, almost like someone trying not to be overheard. He stopped halfway down the hallway and listened more closely. Two people were talking. One voice sounded nervous. The other voice sounded calm but serious. For a moment he wondered if perhaps some of the staff were having a private conversation after finishing their work. It wouldn't be the first time people forgot how quiet the house could be at night. Still, something about the tone of the conversation felt different. He continued walking. As he moved closer to the room where the light was on, he noticed something else that made him pause. The door was slightly open. A thin line of warm light spilled into the dark hallway. The voices inside became clearer. He couldn't hear every word yet, but he could tell the conversation was important. The nervous voice spoke first. "I'm telling you, he can't find out like this." The calm voice answered quietly. "He deserves to know the truth." The man standing in the hallway froze. The truth about what? His expression hardened slightly, but he didn't step inside yet. Instead, he moved closer to the door, careful not to make any sound. Inside the room, the conversation continued. "You don't understand," the nervous voice said again. "If he sees this before we explain it, everything could go wrong." There was a short silence. Then the calm voice replied slowly, "We can't hide it forever." The man's heart began to beat a little faster. Very few things in his life surprised him anymore. He had built his reputation by staying ahead of problems before they appeared. Nothing inside his own home was supposed to be outside his control. Yet here he was, standing outside a room in his own house, listening to a conversation he knew nothing about. He stepped closer to the door. Through the narrow opening, he could see part of the room. The light inside was bright compared to the dark hallway. Shadows moved across the floor as someone shifted their position. He leaned slightly toward the doorframe and looked inside. What he saw made his body go completely still. For a moment he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. The scene inside the room didn't make sense. The two people standing there were not strangers. They were people he recognized immediately, people who had been part of his household for years. But what they were doing in that moment was something he never expected to see. His hand slowly moved to the wall beside him as he tried to steady himself. Inside the room, one of them was holding something carefully, almost protectively. The other person stood nearby, watching with clear concern on their face. The object between them was small, but the meaning behind it felt enormous. The man in the hallway felt a sudden wave of shock rush through him. His breathing slowed as his mind tried to understand what he was seeing. This was impossible. Everything about his life had been built on strict rules and careful order. No one acted without permission. No one made decisions that could affect the household without informing him first. Yet the moment unfolding inside that room suggested that something important had been happening right under his roof without his knowledge. And it had been happening for some time. The nervous voice spoke again, almost whispering now. "What if he walks in right now?" The calm voice answered quietly. "Then we tell him the truth." The man outside the door felt his chest tighten. His fingers pressed harder against the wall as the full weight of the moment hit him. The truth. Whatever that truth was, it had clearly been hidden from him. And now he was standing only a few steps away from it. For the first time in many years, the powerful man who controlled so much of the city suddenly felt unsure of what he should do next. He could step into the room immediately and demand answers. Or he could stay silent for another moment and listen. Inside the room, one of the people turned slightly, adjusting their grip on the small object they were holding. The movement revealed something that made the man in the hallway feel dizzy. His vision blurred for a split second as the realization struck him. A cold wave of shock ran through his entire body. His knees weakened. The powerful man who had faced countless dangerous situations without fear suddenly felt as if the ground beneath him had shifted. He gripped the wall tightly to keep himself standing. Because what he had just seen inside that room was something he never imagined possible inside his own home. And the truth waiting just beyond that door was strong enough to almost make him collapse. The man took a slow, steadying breath and stepped slightly closer to the doorway. The room inside was quiet now, the nervous tension lingering like a heavy cloud. His eyes focused on the two people, both frozen in place as if they had sensed his presence before he even spoke. He had walked into many dangerous situations in his life, situations that could have ended badly, but nothing had ever shaken him like this moment. It was the unexpected, the hidden, the secret that nobody thought he would ever discover, and yet here it was, revealed in his own house. For a long moment he simply stood there, watching. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the scene. Every muscle in his body was tense. Years of authority and control had taught him to act decisively, to respond to situations quickly, to dominate. But this was different. He could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him. The power he wielded outside these walls seemed to mean nothing here. Inside his home, the rules were different, and he had just realized how much he had misunderstood them. He cleared his throat softly, and the sound echoed faintly in the room. Both people turned slowly to face him, their expressions a mixture of fear and relief. The nervous one stepped forward slightly, hands trembling. You You shouldn't be here yet, they stammered. Their voice was low, careful, as if speaking any louder might break something delicate in the air. I came home early, he said simply, his tone even. He didn't shout, didn't demand an explanation. He just stated the fact. But even in its simplicity it carried weight. Authority carried weight, and he had it naturally. Yet, something in his chest tightened as he saw the reaction in their eyes. They expected anger. They expected punishment. But he did not feel anger. Not yet. He felt confusion, curiosity, and a strange sense of vulnerability. He realized that his presence had shifted the balance in the room. They had been having a conversation that was not meant for his ears, and now everything was exposed. The nervous one swallowed hard and took a step closer to the calm figure. We were going to tell you soon, they said, almost whispering. We didn't want you to find out like this. Their eyes flickered between him and the object they had been holding. The object was small, delicate, something that clearly mattered more than anything else in the room. The man's eyes followed the movement of their hands, trying to understand its significance. Whatever it was, it seemed tied to something bigger, something that had been kept secret for a long time. He shifted slightly, allowing his gaze to move over the room. It was familiar in every way. Furniture in its usual places, the soft glow of lamps casting shadows on the walls, the quiet hum of life inside a house that had always been orderly. Yet tonight the order felt fragile. The calm surface of his home, the control he had believed was absolute, seemed suddenly incomplete. Secrets could hide anywhere, even under his own roof, and he was seeing proof of that now. The calm figure in the room finally spoke, their voice steady but soft. We were protecting you, they said. We didn't want you to know the truth until the right time. They glanced at the nervous one and back at him, their eyes showing a mixture of concern and resolve. We thought it was better if you didn't see this yet. We thought it might hurt you. The words struck him like a physical blow. Hurt him? He had spent his life building walls around himself, trusting few, and demanding loyalty from everyone. The idea that someone had been protecting him, making decisions in his absence, felt foreign and strange. He wanted to react, to question, to demand answers immediately, but instead he stood quietly, letting the words sink in. His mind worked through them slowly, turning over every possibility. What truth? He finally asked, his voice calm but firm. It was the first time he had spoken, and the silence that followed made the room feel even heavier. The calm figure shifted slightly, as if preparing to reveal something that had been buried for years. The nervous one stepped back, unsure of how to respond, their hands fidgeting with the object. It was clear that what they were about to say carried great weight, something that could change everything the man believed about his home, his life, and the people he trusted most. The calm figure took a deep breath. It's about your family, they said slowly. The words were simple, but they carried an impact far beyond their meaning. About something that happened long before you thought you were safe. Their eyes met his, searching for a reaction, and then they continued. We didn't want to burden you with this earlier. We thought it would be better if you didn't know until you were ready. The man felt a lump form in his throat. Family. The word alone held power. It was something he had always protected fiercely, something he had always controlled. To hear that there was a hidden truth about his family, something kept from him for years, was almost unbearable. He felt a mixture of fear, anger, and curiosity, all colliding in his chest. Yet he did not move, did not shout, did not demand answers. He simply listened, trying to absorb every detail, every nuance of what was being revealed. The nervous one finally spoke, their voice trembling. It started years ago, they said, before you became who you are today. There were decisions made, things that were kept hidden. We tried to shield you from it. We thought it would be easier for you not to know. They glanced at the object in their hands. This is part of it. The man stepped slightly closer, his eyes fixed on the object. He did not reach for it. He did not touch it. He only looked, trying to understand its meaning. There was something fragile about it, something important, something that connected to the past in a way he could not yet comprehend. The air in the room was thick with tension, the kind of tension that comes from unspoken truths and secrets that have waited too long to be revealed. "Why now?" he asked, his voice low. "Why show me this tonight?" There was no accusation in his tone, only a need to understand. He had lived his life controlling situations, predicting outcomes, and demanding obedience. Yet here he was, faced with a truth he had never anticipated, a truth that no amount of control could have prepared him for. The calm figure met his gaze steadily. "Because it's time," they said simply. "We can't hide it anymore. The longer we wait, the harder it becomes. You need to know the truth, even if it shocks you." Their words were calm, but behind them was the weight of years of secrecy, of fear, of hope that the revelation would not destroy everything. The man took another breath, feeling the air in his lungs mix with the tension of the moment. He realized that what he had just discovered was not just about the object, not just about the people in the room, but about a life he thought he fully understood. The rules he had lived by, the control he had exercised, suddenly felt less absolute. The house, the people, the very life he had built, were all part of a story he had not fully known until now. He stepped slightly closer, careful not to alarm anyone. "Tell me everything," he said. His voice was steady, but inside, his mind was racing. Every instinct told him to demand answers, to assert control, to react with the authority that had defined him for years. Yet another part of him, a quieter, more human part, knew that this was not a situation for dominance. This was a situation for understanding, for listening, for confronting a truth that had waited too long to be faced. The calm figure nodded, and the nervous one exhaled slowly, relief mingling with fear. The story began to unfold, slowly, carefully, piece by piece. Events from years ago, decisions made in secrecy, sacrifices kept hidden, and moments of fear and hope that had shaped the lives of everyone in the room. Each revelation added weight to the air, each detail making the man realize just how much he had misunderstood, just how much he had been unaware of, and just how fragile the order he had taken for granted really was. As the night wore on, the man listened without interruption, letting the story sink into him. There were moments when he felt anger, moments when he felt sadness, and moments when he felt something he rarely allowed himself to feel. Gratitude. Gratitude for the people who had carried burdens in his place, who had protected him in ways he could never have imagined, who had risked much to preserve the life he had built. By the time the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, he had absorbed the story, the full weight of it. And he understood that his world had shifted. The revelation had not destroyed him, as he had feared it might. Instead, it had opened his eyes to truths he had never seen, to the depth of loyalty and care that existed around him, and to the complexity of the life he had always believed was simple and controllable. For the first time in years, he realized that being powerful was not only about control or fear. Sometimes it was about understanding, about patience, about recognizing the courage of those who act in silence to protect, even when their actions are hidden from view. And in that moment, standing quietly in the room where his secrets had been revealed, he understood something deeper about the people around him, the choices they had made, and the fragile yet enduring bonds that held their lives together. He had arrived home early, unannounced, expecting nothing unusual. What he found instead was a revelation, a story, and a truth that would change how he saw his home, his family, and himself. And though the night had started with shock, by its end, it had given him something unexpected. A glimpse into the hidden strength, courage, and care of the people who had quietly shaped his world without ever seeking recognition or reward. The man stayed still for a long moment, letting the weight of what he had just heard settle in his mind. The story unfolded slowly, each detail more astonishing than the last. He had expected secrets, perhaps small betrayals or hidden mistakes, but nothing prepared him for this. The truths being revealed were not about minor errors or careless actions. They were about choices made to protect him, decisions taken in silence that shaped everything he had believed about his life. For years, he had trusted the people around him, yes, but he had never known the full depth of their loyalty. Tonight, he was seeing it in its entirety. He finally stepped fully into the room, his presence no longer a question. Both people froze completely, their eyes wide, hearts pounding. They expected anger, punishment, or at least a sharp reprimand. Instead, he stood quietly, taking in the scene with slow, deliberate attention. His face showed little emotion, but inside, his mind was racing. He had spent decades managing danger and controlling outcomes, yet here he faced something that no amount of power could prepare him for. The human truth, raw and unguarded, that had been kept from him. The nervous one took a cautious step forward. "We didn't want you to find out like this," they said, voice shaking. "We only meant to tell you when the time was right. We thought it would protect you, spare you the pain until you were ready." The man's eyes softened slightly. He had never thought of the people in his house as capable of making choices for him. Not because he didn't trust them, but because he had always assumed he needed to be in control of everything. Tonight, he realized that control had never been as absolute as he had believed. These people had acted out of care, making decisions he himself would never have imagined making in their positions. He could feel the weight of their loyalty pressing against his chest in a way that was almost overwhelming. The calm figure in the room spoke next. "Everything we did, every step we took, was to keep you safe," they said. Their voice was steady, but there was a depth of emotion behind it that made the man pause. "We made choices that you might have disagreed with, but we did them because we knew it was necessary. We carried burdens we never wanted you to know about because we loved you, and because we believed it was the right thing to do." The man felt a strange mix of emotions rise within him. Pride, confusion, relief, and most unexpectedly, gratitude. Gratitude for these people who had carried heavy responsibilities without ever asking for recognition or reward. Gratitude for the loyalty that had never wavered, even when it had gone unseen. He had ruled his world through fear and authority, believing that power meant control, yet he realized now that there was a kind of strength far more subtle, far more enduring. The strength of those who act in silence to protect what they care about. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. "All these years, you were carrying this for me?" "Yes," the calm figure said. "We did it because you shouldn't have to bear it alone. But now you need to know. You have the right to understand, to make your own decisions, and to see what we have tried so hard to protect." The man's gaze shifted between the two people. He could see the tension in their bodies, the fear of his reaction, and the honesty in their eyes. He understood that their fear was not just about him, but about the consequences of revealing something long hidden. He could feel the weight of that choice, the courage it had taken to bring the truth to light. And he realized that he had underestimated them, underestimated their insight, their courage, their care. He took another step forward, closing the distance between himself and the object they had been protecting. He looked at it carefully, examining its significance, its fragility. He understood that it was more than just an item. It was a symbol, a tangible piece of the secret that had been guarded so carefully. The object connected the past to the present, revealing choices, sacrifices, and risks that had gone unnoticed for years. In its presence, the man felt the invisible threads that tied his life to the people around him. The nervous one spoke again, their voice softer now. "We feared that if you saw it before you were ready, you might react badly. We didn't want to hurt you or make you feel betrayed. We just wanted to give you the truth in a way that wouldn't destroy what we have." The man shook his head slowly, trying to absorb it all. He had always believed that understanding came from control, from strategy, from observing carefully and making calculated decisions. But now he realized that understanding could also come from listening, from patience, from opening oneself to the full human reality of others' actions. Tonight, he was learning that understanding did not always require power. It sometimes required humility, empathy, and trust. He finally spoke, his voice steady but thoughtful. "I need to know everything," he said. "Every detail, every choice, every step you took. I need to understand the whole story, not just the parts you thought I should see." There was a brief silence. The calm figure nodded, and the nervous one exhaled, tension easing slightly. And then they began. They told him about decisions made long ago, about risks taken in silence, about moments of fear and courage that had shaped their lives as well as his. They revealed the hidden burdens they had carried to shield him, the sacrifices that had gone unnoticed, and the truths that had remained unspoken. As the story unfolded, the man listened without interruption. He felt his perspective shifting, the walls he had built around his understanding of life slowly coming down. Every revelation added depth to his view of the people around him, showing him their intelligence, their bravery, and their loyalty in a way he had never appreciated before. And with each new detail, he felt a growing sense of respect and gratitude, mingled with the shock of realizing how much he had been unaware of. Hours passed, but he did not grow impatient. He did not interrupt. He allowed the story to flow, letting each moment sink in, understanding the choices, fears, and hopes of those who had acted in secrecy. And as he listened, he began to understand something profound. That power and control were not always about being the one who dictated actions, but sometimes about recognizing the wisdom and courage of those who act without being asked, and trusting them to do what is right. By the time the early morning light began to filter into the room, he had absorbed the story completely. His heart was heavy with the weight of the past, but also lighter in a strange way, because he now understood the depth of loyalty, care, and courage that had existed around him all along. He realized that the people he had relied on, who had once seemed ordinary or secondary in his life, were in fact extraordinary. They had acted out of love and loyalty, shaping his life in ways he had never imagined. He finally spoke again, his voice low but certain. "I see now. I understand more than I have ever understood before. You acted to protect me even when it meant hiding the truth. I see the sacrifices you made, the burdens you carried, and the courage it took to do what you did." The calm figure nodded, a faint relief in their eyes. The nervous one let out a breath they had been holding, shoulders relaxing slightly. And in that quiet, the room seemed to shift. The weight of hidden secrets, the tension of unspoken truths, began to ease, replaced by a fragile sense of understanding and connection. The man looked at the object one last time. It was no longer just a symbol of hidden truth. It was now a symbol of trust, loyalty, and courage. And he understood that his life, his home, and the people around him were bound together by these invisible threads of care and sacrifice. He realized that true strength was not just in power, fear, or control, but in recognizing and honoring the loyalty and courage of others, even when it had been hidden for years. For the first time in many years, he felt a sense of humility. He understood that life was not just about rules, strategy, or authority. It was about the human connections that give meaning to those rules, the quiet courage that protects what is valued, and the sacrifices made without expectation of recognition. And he knew that tonight, everything had changed. The revelations had not destroyed him. They had not weakened him. Instead, they had opened his eyes to a deeper understanding of loyalty, courage, and love. And as he stood quietly in the room, surrounded by people who had risked so much to protect him, he realized that he had been given something far more valuable than power. He had been given the truth, and with it, a chance to see life and the people around him in a completely new light. And in that quiet moment, he finally allowed himself to feel something he rarely permitted. Gratitude, deep and unspoken, for the courage and loyalty of those who had acted in silence to protect him and the life he had built. The man sat quietly in the room, the object still resting between the two people who had been keeping it safe for him. The early morning light spilled through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Everything felt heavy and still, as if the house itself were holding its breath. He had heard the story, he had seen the sacrifices, and he had begun to understand the loyalty and courage that had been hidden from him. But there was still something missing, a piece of the past that connected all the dots. He could feel it, like a faint heartbeat beneath the surface, something that had been buried for years, waiting for this moment to emerge. "Tell me about it," he said softly, his voice calm but firm. "I need to know what really happened. I need to understand the past that shaped all of this." The calm figure exchanged a glance with the nervous one. For a long moment, neither spoke. The weight of what they were about to reveal was immense. It was not just a story of loyalty or hidden truths. It was a story that stretched back years, even decades, a story that had consequences still echoing through their lives and his own. Finally, the calm figure began, speaking slowly and carefully, as if each word needed to be measured. "It started long before you became who you are today," they said. "There was a moment, a choice that set everything into motion, a decision that was meant to protect you, but that also created a chain of events none of us could have predicted. We carried the consequences of that choice, and we acted in silence, hoping it would shield you from the pain. But it has always been part of your story, whether you knew it or not." The man listened closely, leaning forward slightly. His heart beat faster, a mixture of anticipation and anxiety rushing through him. He had always been a man who valued control, who believed that knowledge was power. And now, for the first time, he was facing knowledge that felt almost too heavy to bear. Yet he could not look away. He could not stop himself from seeking the truth, no matter how difficult it might be. The nervous one finally spoke, their voice trembling. "We were trying to protect you from people who could have hurt you, from situations you would have never been ready to face. We made choices, took risks, and hid the truth to keep you safe. But the truth, it has always been there, waiting." The man nodded slowly, taking it all in. He understood the weight of their words. He had always known that loyalty existed in his household, that people served him not just out of fear, but because they respected him. But now he was seeing that loyalty in its deepest, most personal form. It was not about obedience, it was about love, care, and sacrifice. And that understanding brought with it a strange mixture of humility and astonishment. The calm figure continued. "The events from the past involved more than just you or us. They involved decisions that affected lives, choices that were made to protect what was important. We carried the burden because we knew you could not bear it yet. And now, the time has come for you to see it, to understand it fully, and to make your own decisions about what to do with it." The man's mind raced. He had spent so many years believing that strength meant control, that power meant dominance. But now he was beginning to see another kind of strength, a quieter, deeper strength, the kind that came from understanding, patience, and care. He realized that the people around him had been stronger than he had imagined. Not because they defied him, but because they carried the weight of truth in silence, protecting him without asking for recognition or reward. He reached out slowly, touching the object in front of them. He examined it carefully, understanding now that it was more than just a thing, it was a symbol of decisions made long ago, of sacrifices carried quietly, and of the hidden threads that connected the past to the present. The object was a key to understanding everything that had happened, a tangible reminder of the lives, choices, and risks that had been woven together to shape his own. The nervous one took a deep breath. "It has always been about the people who cared for you," they said. "We thought we were protecting you, but in doing so we also protected ourselves, our own hearts, and the truth we feared would break you. The object, it is part of that history. It is proof of the lengths we went to, the decisions we made, and the love we carried quietly." The man nodded slowly, feeling a mix of emotions rise within him. Anger? No. Betrayal? Not exactly. Shock? Yes, in some ways. But mostly, he felt a deep and profound sense of understanding. For the first time, he could see the full picture, the story of his life and the lives of those who had acted to protect him. It was a story of courage, of loyalty, and of quiet strength that had remained hidden until now. He took a step back and let the silence settle. The room was still, the air heavy with emotion, yet lighter in some ways too. The revelations had not destroyed him, they had opened his eyes. They had given him insight into the choices of others, into the consequences of actions taken in secret, and into the courage it takes to act for the good of someone else without seeking recognition. "You protected me," he said quietly, almost to himself. "You carried this burden so I wouldn't have to. All these years. And I never knew." The calm figure nodded. "We did it because we cared, because we believed it was the right thing to do, and because we knew that one day you would understand." The man looked around the room, at the people who had risked so much, at the object that represented years of hidden truths, and at the space that had held it all silently. He realized that his life had been shaped not just by his own decisions, but by the courage and loyalty of those around him. He felt a quiet respect, a deep gratitude, and a newfound understanding of the complexity of human choices. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "I understand now," he said. "I see the past, I see the sacrifices, and I see the courage it took, and I will not forget it. I will not underestimate the people around me again." The calm figure smiled faintly, relief and pride mingling in their expression. The nervous one let out a long breath, the tension easing from their body. And in that quiet room, something shifted. The hidden burdens, the unspoken truths, the weight of years carried in silence. They all began to feel lighter. The story of the past, though filled with challenges and risks, was no longer a source of fear. It was a source of understanding, a bridge to deeper connections and stronger bonds. The man realized that the night had changed him. He had arrived home unexpectedly, unannounced, expecting routine and control. Instead, he had found truth, loyalty, and courage revealed in ways he had never imagined. He had seen the depths of human care, the hidden sacrifices that shape lives, and the quiet strength of those who act out of love and dedication. And in that realization, he understood something profound. Power is not only measured in control, fear, or authority. True strength is also measured in the courage to protect, the wisdom to act in silence, and the ability to recognize and honor the loyalty and bravery of others. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of connection that went beyond authority. It was a human connection, fragile yet enduring, built on trust, sacrifice, and care. And as the early morning light filled the room, he understood that the past, though complex and hidden, had given him something invaluable. The knowledge that he was surrounded by people of extraordinary courage and loyalty, people who had shaped his life in ways he could now see and appreciate fully. He looked at the object one last time, understanding its full significance. It was a reminder, a symbol, and a key to the past. But it was also a promise for the future. A reminder that loyalty, courage, and care could endure, even in secrecy, and that the bonds formed through such acts could transform lives, even the life of a powerful man who had once believed he needed to control everything to be strong. And in that quiet room, surrounded by truth and revelation, he finally allowed himself to feel something he rarely permitted. Hope. Hope that understanding and loyalty could guide his decisions moving forward, that he could honor the sacrifices made in silence, and that the strength of those around him would continue to shape not just his life, but the lives of everyone connected to him. Tonight, the past had been revealed, and with it came a new perspective, a deeper understanding of loyalty, courage, and the human heart. And as he sat quietly, absorbing the story of choices, risks, and sacrifices, he realized that the future could be different, better, and guided by the wisdom of those who had always acted with care, even when the world did not see it. The man sat quietly for a long moment, letting everything sink in. The story of the past, the secrets, the sacrifices, and the courage of those around him had been revealed. The room felt heavy with emotion, yet strangely calm, as if the air itself recognized the truth that had finally come to light. He could feel the weight of the hidden years pressing down on him, but he also felt something else, a quiet strength rising from understanding, from empathy, from the realization of what had been carried silently for him all this time. He looked at the two people in front of him. They had acted in silence, taken risks, and carried burdens without ever asking for recognition. Their loyalty and care had been constant, even when it went unseen. And now, faced with the full truth, he had a choice to make. The choice was not about punishment or authority. It was about how he would move forward, how he would honor the sacrifices made, and how he would respond to the courage that had been revealed. For years, he had ruled his life with precision, control, and fear. He had believed that power meant knowing everything, anticipating every risk, and managing every detail. But tonight, he realized that strength was not only in control. It was in trust, understanding, and the courage to let others act in ways that serve the greater good. It was in the unseen sacrifices, in the quiet acts of care that shaped lives more deeply than any command or order ever could. He took a deep breath and spoke. "I understand now. he said slowly. I see what has been done to protect me. I see the choices you made, the risks you took, and the courage it required. I see the truth that has been hidden all these years. The calm figure nodded, their eyes steady, reflecting the relief and pride of having finally shared the full story. The nervous one exhaled, tension leaving their body, knowing that the moment they had feared for so long had passed without anger or punishment. There was a stillness in the room, a recognition that something important had shifted, not just in what was known, but in how it was understood. The man continued, his voice quiet but certain. Tonight has changed everything. I have always believed that power was about control, that authority was about fear. But now I see something more. True strength is about understanding, about recognizing the courage of others, about seeing the sacrifices made in silence. It is about honoring those who act not for themselves, but for others. He paused, letting his words hang in the air. The people around him listened intently, unsure of what he would do next. For a moment, the room was filled only with the sound of quiet breaths and the faint creak of floorboards. Outside, the first light of morning was beginning to fill the house, but inside, time seemed suspended. This was a moment of reckoning, of choice, and of transformation. I have a decision to make, he said finally, his gaze fixed on the object that had been the center of the story. I can continue as I always have, living in control and fear, relying on rules and authority to define my life. Or I can take what I have learned tonight and let it guide me differently. I can choose to honor the sacrifices made, to recognize the courage that has protected me, and to see the people around me not just as subordinates, but as human beings capable of extraordinary loyalty and care. The calm figure spoke, their voice gentle. We hope you will choose wisely. We acted in silence because we believed it was necessary. But the choice now is yours. How you respond will shape the future, not just for you, but for all of us. The man nodded, absorbing the weight of their words. He realized that this moment was about more than just understanding the past. It was about shaping the future. The way he acted from this point forward would define the relationships, the trust, and the bonds that had been tested and revealed tonight. It was a moment to decide whether to continue the life he had always known, or to embrace a path guided by understanding, loyalty, and empathy. He looked again at the two people in the room, seeing not just the faces he had known for years, but the courage, the fear, and the love behind them. He understood the risk they had taken, the fear they had endured, and the hope they had carried in silence. And he realized that their actions had given him a gift far greater than power or control. They had given him the truth, the ability to see, and the chance to respond in a way that honored their loyalty and courage. I will choose differently, he said finally, his voice steady and sure. I will not act with anger or punishment. I will not demand control where it is not needed. Instead, I will recognize what has been done for me, honor the sacrifices, and move forward with understanding and trust. This house, this family, and the people who have protected me will be seen and valued for what they truly are. There was a moment of silence, filled with unspoken relief, gratitude, and understanding. The calm figure nodded, a faint smile touching their lips. The nervous one exhaled fully, shoulders relaxing, and a quiet sense of hope filled the room. The man's decision had transformed the atmosphere. What had begun as shock, tension, and fear had become clarity, connection, and a deeper understanding of human courage. He stood and took the object in his hands, examining it with care. It was a reminder of the past, of choices made in silence, and of the risks taken to protect him. But it was also a symbol of what was possible in the future. Trust, understanding, and loyalty that could shape a new way of living. He felt the weight of it, and yet he also felt a strange lightness, a sense that the truth now revealed could guide him forward rather than weigh him down. I see now that the past has not been lost, he said softly. It has shaped us, strengthened us, and prepared us for this moment. The sacrifices made in silence, the courage shown without recognition, these are the foundations of what we have, and they will guide us moving forward. The calm figure stepped closer, placing a hand gently on the man's shoulder. "We acted because we believed in you, and because we believed in the good that could come from protecting what mattered. Now that the truth is known, it is up to all of us to build the future together." The man nodded, a sense of purpose rising within him. He understood that his life had always been defined by control and fear, but tonight had shown him a different way. Strength was not only about power, it was about trust, understanding, and recognizing the courage of others. The decisions he made from this point forward would honor the sacrifices made and create a foundation for deeper connections and stronger bonds. He placed the object carefully on the table, its presence now a symbol of more than secrecy or protection. It was a reminder of loyalty, courage, and the power of truth. And as he looked at the two people in the room, he saw not just staff or subordinates but human beings, who had acted out of care, fear, and love. They had shaped his life, and now he could shape the future in a way that recognized and honored their contributions. The morning light grew stronger, filling the room with warmth and clarity. The night's revelations had transformed everything. The shock, the fear, the uncertainty. All of it had given way to understanding, empathy, and a profound sense of connection. The man realized that his life would never be the same. The truth had changed him, opened his eyes to loyalty and courage he had never fully appreciated, and given him the chance to act differently moving forward. "I will lead differently from now on," he said, his voice quiet but resolute. "I will not rely solely on fear or control. I will recognize loyalty, honor courage, and value the people who have always acted to protect what is important. We will move forward together, stronger and more connected than before." There was a quiet agreement in the room, an unspoken understanding that the bonds revealed tonight would guide their lives from this point forward. The nervous one offered a small smile, the tension finally gone, while the calm figure nodded with quiet pride. The man felt a sense of relief, a sense of hope, and a newfound respect for the courage and loyalty that had always surrounded him. He stood slowly, looking around the room. Every detail, every shadow, every familiar object now carried new meaning. The house that had always been a place of control and order was now a place of understanding, connection, and human courage. The decisions of the past, once hidden and heavy, had revealed the strength of those around him, and the choices he would make now would honor that strength. The man took a final, deep breath and smiled faintly. For years, he had walked through life believing that power was everything. But tonight, he had learned something far more important. Power was not just control or fear, it was trust, understanding, and the recognition of the sacrifices made by others. And with that understanding, he felt ready to face the future, not alone, but with the people who had always protected him and shaped his life, even in silence. As the room filled with the soft glow of the morning sun, he realized that everything had changed. The past, once hidden, had revealed itself, and the truth had opened the door to a future defined not by fear, but by loyalty, courage, and human connection. And in that quiet moment, he finally felt what he had never allowed himself to feel fully before: hope, trust, and the deep, enduring strength of the people around him. Tonight had started with shock and uncertainty, but it ended with clarity, understanding, and a promise for the future. The man, who had once believed he controlled everything through fear, now understood that true control comes from recognizing courage, honoring loyalty, and embracing the human truths that shape life. And with that understanding, he stepped forward, ready to lead not just with power, but with wisdom, empathy, and trust that had been quietly earned over years of unseen sacrifice.